My dear friends and my dear students, let's look at certain facts related to the life of John Milton and his works. But before I start, I would like to let you know something extra about John Milton. John Milton, very, very important name in the history of English literature. Very, very important name in belated Elizabethan age literature. Very, very important name in the 17th century English literature. Very, very important name in the very, very important name of the Puritan age, and very, very important and prolific writer during Civil War. The writer, the poet, the historian who had his great contribution in the formation and promotion of Commonwealth government in 1649, after the execution of Charles I on 30th January 1649. The man who turned blind in both of the eyes even before completing 50 years of his own life. The man who gets the credit of writing a single solitary epic in English language, that is Paradise Lost. So let's look at very, very important facts related to the life of John Milton, and very, very important fact and things related to his works. John Milton and John Milton life and work. Life. Milton was born on 9th December 1608 in Cheapside, Bread Street, near St. Paul Church, London. So this date is important, 9 December, year 1608, and most important, the place he was born. That is Cheapside, Bread Street, near St. Paul Church. Remember that these facts are very, very important. Possible that such question related to the place, related to the year, related to the date of the birth of this poet, historian, and great figure may pop up in the upcoming examination, upcoming competitive examination, where English literature is very, very important as a syllabus, or the part of the syllabus. English literature is the part of the syllabus. So he was born on 9th December 1608, Cheapside, Bread Street, near St. Paul Church, London. Next very important fact, his parents to John Milton. Father to John Milton was also John Milton, SR Senior. Senior added to the name in order to set aside confusion. So, father to John Milton was John Milton, to Senior added. Remember, 1562-1647, lifespan of John Milton's father. John Milton's father, John Milton, was born in 1562, died in 1647. See this. And Sarah Jeffrey, name of John Milton's mother. She was born 1572, 1637. As many as 10 years before her husband, she died. And as many as 10 years, she was junior to her husband in age. Remember these facts, very important. When John Milton was born to John Milton and Sarah, John Milton's father, John Milton, was 46, whereas Milton's mother, Sarah, was 36. It is said that John Milton's grandfather, was holding some high position in church, whereas Milton's father was probably a tailor. So, John Milton's father, John Milton Sr., he was born 1562, died 1647. Mother Sarah Jeffrey, born 1572, died 1637. At the time of the birth of John Milton, father was 46, mother 36. Now, very important fact, baptized. Baptized, conformed to the family of Christianity after 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 certain ritual that is performed in churches. Whenever a child is born in the family of the Christian, that child is baptized on the third day of its birth. On the third day of the birth of that child born in the family of the Christian, the child is taken to the nearby church. Certain ritual is performed, and that confirms that ritual, that the child becomes the part of that Christian, Christian world, and the day that child gets his name. Generally, this ritual, baptism, happens on the third day of the birth of the child in the Christian family, but it did not happen in the case of John Milton. Milton was born 9th December 1608, but he was baptized on 20th December at All Hallows Church. Remember that. John Milton was not baptized on the third day of his birth, but instead he was baptized as many as after 11 days on 20th December 1608. That the fact that you need to bear in mind. Next one, also he was baptized on 20th December at All Hallows Church. Next, had an elder sister. John Milton had an elder sister, Anne, and 3 younger brothers. Remember that. In totality, John Milton's parents had 5, including Milton. First, a daughter, Anne, then John Milton, and then 3 more kids, 3 more children. And out of those 3 more children, only 1 survived, whereas 2 died in their infancy, in their childhood. Remember that. John Milton had 3 younger siblings. Out of those 3 younger siblings, only 1 lived. whereas two died in their childhood, in their infancy, not in childhood. Next important now. So, see, till here we have looked at those very, very important facts related to the birth, related to the just parents of just John Milton in nutshell, in a few words. Now we'll look at the qualification, education of John Milton, because John Milton was highly learned. He was a great scholar. He was Cambridge graduate as well as Cambridge postgraduate in humanity, in arts. Education. His education began at St. Paul School in between 1615 1622. So the date of the beginning, or the year of the beginning, year of the beginning of the schooling of John Milton is unknown or not clear. The just the authentic sources the authentic sources related to John Milton, they say that it is not sure that which year Milton began his schooling, or which year Milton's schooling just began, but it is assumed that in between 1615 to 1622, schooling of Milton began at Saint Paul. Just remember the fact. Joined Christ College, Cambridge in 1625, and again, on the basis of the facts or the sources available here, available there, it is said that Milton was admitted in Christ Church College, College of Cambridge, in the year 1625, and he got his bachelor degree in 1629 and Master of Arts in 1632. See this. So, joined Christ College, Cambridge in 1625 and awarded bachelor degree in 1629, and in 1632 Master of Arts. So remember the just degrees Milton obtained, or Milton got, or Milton was bestowed. For a certain period of time, Milton was even rusticated actually from Cambridge. And in between, I think 1627, 28 around, he was rusticated because of having some kind of a differences with the certain teacher of Cambridge. At that time, when he was just serving rustication, at that time Milton was just getting education by a certain tutor at home. But Milton was hopeful that very soon he was going to be allowed to join the college, and really it happened. He was soon allowed, and he got the graduate degree, then master degree. So, 1632, Master of Arts, wanted to enter ministry earlier. And see one thing, bear in mind, Why did Milton go to just St. Paul, just Christ College, Cambridge? Why? Because he wanted to hold the high position of minister in church. This was the planning maybe of Milton's father and maybe Milton himself, but later on, all of a sudden, he gave up the idea and decided to become a full time writer. Started writing a lot on politics, on history, on this subject, that subject, so on and so forth, and at last, his magnum opus, Paradise Lost, manifesting the ways of the God to the men. Now, next, very important fact note, called Lady of Christ by fellow students because of look, nature, and behavior. So, while at Christ College, Cambridge, Milton was called Lady of the Christ by his fellow students because because of his look, because of his curly probably hair, and that curly just yellow or the golden hair all over his hair. And second very important thing, that he why he was called just Lady of the Christ, that he was to some extent reserved and reticent. He did not talk a lot. He remained reserved, did not just prefer be friend with this that. It was all because of that. You can say that he was called Lady of the Christ, or Lady of the College, by his fellow friends or fellow students. Tour. On tour to France, Italy, and other part of continent from 1638 to 1639, about 15 months. And in the year 1638, he started on a European tour, a tour in Europe continent, and that tour of John Milton lasted for 15 months, just covering some of the countries of Europe like France, Italy, so on and so forth, staying for here for 2 months or 1 month, so on and so forth. And during this trip or tour, he got an opportunity to meet Galileo, who was at that time imprisoned or jailed in a certain prison of Italy, certain prison of Rome. So, see, Milton to some extent began writing while he was at just Christ just College, Cambridge. Like this work, you see, later on we'll discuss in detail that a certain work that Milton just wrote there, like you see this works. See, just these all works you see, like just on the morning of uh, Christ Nativity, El Allegro, El Penseroso, on Shakespeare. All right, all these works John Milton composed being at Christ College, Cambridge. So, after you can say that after getting the degree, after getting the master degree, just Milton in 1638 started started or went on a tour, went on a Europe tour, and on that tour he went to, just as part of that tour he went to Italy, France, and some other European countries, and stayed there for a certain time. And there, while on a visit to just France, sorry, to just Rome, Italy, he met Galileo. So this fact very important, that he was on a tour to just a European country from 1638 to 39. And how long this tour of Milton lasted? It lasted for 15 months, as many as 15 months. And then again he was back to his country in 1639. Now, very important, just a phase in his own life, when he married Mary Powell, 1642. He married a rich lady, a rich woman, Mary Powell, in the year 1642. Remember that. This was the first marriage of John Milton, and this marriage happened in the year 1642, but this marriage was not proved a happy marriage. Possibly the ideologies of these two people absolutely did not match at all, because on one hand Milton was mature, on the other hand Mary Powell was just probably 17 years old. Age difference was there, and it's all because of that. They had a lot of intellectual differences. As a result of this, a day came in their lives, just Mary Powell all of a sudden, without any just prior information to John Milton, decided to leave Milton's house and went went to her parents' home, where she probably stayed for a year or two. And here Milton was living all alone, and at that time probably Milton gave a lot of thinking to divorce, and wrote wrote as many as two, three just divorce tracts. Why? Because there, in the absence of his first wife, Milton thought a lot and realized the just realized the importance of divorce. Went through these certain passages of just a Bible where certain things were mentioned relating or related to this divorce. He read and even wrote a tract. Just wrote a certain tract. Let me just check it. Where it is? Yes, this. Yes, tetrachordon. He wrote in probably 1630 around. He wrote it, all right, and published later. All right, he wrote it. This was published in 1645. You see this, all right, and Milton here married 1642. So see this work. Milton wrote this work only after thinking a lot, in the absence of his first wife, whom he married in the year 1642. And 1645 he published this work, that is Tetrachordon. Tetrachordon, probably a Greek word that means four-stringed. Here he refers or mention certain passages from Bible, all right, in order to give us support to he says what he says about divorce. Why? Because he wants to tell the people of his own time divorce in some cases becomes must. So here he's supporting, just giving reasons why divorce sometimes becomes important. Because John Milton actually wanted divorce from his wife Mary Powell. Why? Because their relation absolutely not normal at all. But she came from her parents' home, and soon after returning to Milton, she died. She died in the year, see, died in the year 1652. So Mary and Milton married 1642 and she died 1652. Their relation never happy relation. They never enjoyed their relation. Milton gave a lot of thinking to divorce, red tetracordon, and one more tetracordon, then cholestrian. Cholestrian, again, Greek word, means just uh, cholestrian, punishment, related to punishment it is. So cholestrian, this is also a Greek word that means house of justice or tool of punishment. So these two works, see, tetrachordon, cholestrian 1645, then divorced. These are the divorce tracts. All right, that Milton wrote in just possibly he conceived these just tracts, thought, and he just made a structure of these tracts in his own mind when he was just undergoing separation, just undergoing separation. Why? Because his first wife Mary Powell had left him and had been just living with her parents in their house. At that time, Milton felt the necessity and importance of divorce, and that's why he wrote these tracts. So we'll come here later. Say, so marriage, first marriage, Mary Powell, 1642. She died 1652. Then Catherine Woodcock, Milton married second time. He married Catherine Woodcock second time, 1656 they married. She again died 1658. And now third marriage of John Milton to Elizabeth Minshull, 1663. Exactly, you can say that 11 years before the death of John Milton. 1663 he married, and possibly when he married, he was blind in both of the eyes. But this third marriage was a successful marriage. Though Milton was blind, even then their marriage was successful. Remember that. So remember that Milton married three times in his lifetime for 1642. Just Mary Powell. Second marriage, Catherine Woodcock, 1656, and third marriage to Elizabeth Minshull, 1663. Now, very important, Milton's work. The size of the Milton's work huge. and very, very important, because Milton tried his hand at various things, very much different, and you can say myriad in subject, in theme, so on and so forth. So let's look at the important works of John Milton. Works. While at St. Paul, translated Psalm 114 from Hebrew. So when he joined St. Paul, when he just began his schooling, soon after just starting his schooling, Milton translated Psalm number 143 from Hebrew language into English language. He translated, remember that. And this Psalm 144 is all about the liberation of the people of Israel, and how the God guided them safely from Egypt to their country. The Psalm 114 is all about, and Milton translated it from Hebrew to into English language. This important one. You see this. Next one, composed letters in Latin verse in couplets. After that, he composed many letters, and he wrote letters in you can say that in couplets. Couplets, two stanza, two-line stanza, two-line poems in generally iambic pentameter. There are generally two kinds of couplets, one couplet, one heroic couplet. Couplets, two line rhyming together, possibly just metrical pattern may differ, but heroic couplet generally, or not generally, always written in iambic pentameter. Remember that. So he wrote many just letters in Latin language using the elegiac just metrical form in elegy. Elegy is a kind of a poem of mourning. At that time, in elegy, generally just iambic iambic just actually, yes, probably, yes, iambic meter was used. So see here written, these letters called elegy for elegy, sorry, this here from composed letters in Latin verse in couplets. First line in dactylic hexameter 6, and second in dactylic pentameter. So first line dactylic hexameter, second line dactylic pentameter. Just remember that. That's why, since it was dactylic hexameter and dactylic pentameter, these two meters were generally used in elegy. And since Milton used these two metrical meters to write those letters in verse form, they were called elegy. Remember that. And one example is important. These letters called elegy for elegic meter used. One was just one name of one letter that he wrote. That is Elegia prima ed calorum dedatum to Deodati. Deodati was actually John Milton's John Milton's college day friend. So he wrote a letter in Latin verse using allergy matrical meter. All right. So he wrote a letter to this very particular person using allergic matrical meter in Latin language. Remember that. And this was the name. Allergia, allergia. It's not working. But remember that Elegia prima et calorum de datum, letter to the deity, his college day or school day friend. Next, in quantum, in quantum Novemberis. English translation, an early poem. This was in Latin. This is Latin. In quantum Novemberis, early poem. English translation, on 5th November. The poem celebrates the anniversary of the failed gunpowder plot of 1605, when Guy Fawkes was discovered preparing to explode the Parliament at the opening with King James and family. Remember that. This latter he wrote in quantum Novemberis. Its English translation is on 5th November. He wrote this on 5th November, and here he wrote this letter in Latin to celebrate that failed attempt made by Guy Fawkes, a man who wanted to blow up Parliament at its opening ceremony, because in the opening ceremony of the Parliament, actually King James with his family was going to attend it, or going to just inaugurate. He was going to inaugurate the opening ceremony. King James with his family was going to inaugurate the opening ceremony of just a new parliament, and Guy Fawkes had made all the plannings by by probably putting or planting explosives inside the new parliament to blow it up in order to kill King James first and his family. But at the just before the opening ceremony, this plot, this actually conspiracy was actually, you can say that just this conspiracy was, or this plan of blowing up the parliament by Guy Fawkes was foiled, and he was caught. He was killed. So, just in order to celebrate the occasion of this foiled attempt of Guy Fawkes to explode or to blow up the parliament with the king and his family, all right, John Milton wrote this just a letter, or wrote this letter in Latin to celebrate the occasion. Remember that. So remember, in Quantum Novemberis, an early poem in Latin, it was actually a poem in Latin language, that English translation on 5th November, the poem celebrate the anniversary. This poem was written to celebrate the anniversary of that failed gunpowder plot of 1605. All right. So probably this poem was written in 1630. Remember that, because This Guy Fawkes had made a plan to blow up the parliament on the day its opening ceremony was going to take place, and King James the First with his family was going to inaugurate it. All right, but just this planning, the conspiracy was leaked, and this conspiracy was made unsuccessful at the 11th hour. And 1630 was celebrating probably the anniversary of that failed attempt. So Milton wrote this poem in Latin to celebrate the anniversary of that foiled or failed just attempt of Guy Fawkes to blow up the parliament on the day its opening ceremony was going to happen, and the king with his family was going to attend it. Remember that. Next is on the death of fair infant dying of cold, 1628. John Milton wrote this poem. Remember that, on the death of fair infant dying of cold. This is the title of a poem that Milton wrote in 1628 to mourn the death of the daughter of his eldest sister Anne. Anne had a daughter. She died possibly of cold. So Milton wrote a poem titled On the Death of the Fair Infant Dying of Cold. Remember that. Milton wrote this poem in order to mourn the death of the daughter of his elder sister Anne. Next, on the morning of Christ Nativity, very, very important poem that John Milton wrote in the year 1629 and published later, very late in 1645, with so many other poems on the title, probably Poems of John Milton, Mr. John Milton. So see, Milton wrote this poem, very, very important poem, on the morning of Christ Nativity, 1629. He wrote, published 1645. Next, very, very important work, El Allegro, published 1645. He wrote this poem probably in 1630-32. And companion poem, these two poems are called companion poems. El Allegro, in Italian language it means the happy man. Next, El Pensieroso, in Italian language it means the thoughtful man or the thinker. These two poems of John Milton are called companion poems. Remember that. One poem was probably written after the other. Probably first El Allegro was written, probably 1630-32. Then Il Penseroso, written 1630. And these two poems published together in 1645. Remember that. After that, on Shakespeare, very, very important poem, and probably first poem of appreciation. This poem is a poem of appreciation. Milton is glorifying William Shakespeare by all the way possible, and this is probably the first published poem by John Milton or from John Milton. It was the first poem of John Milton that was published first, or it was first published poem of John Milton, you can say that. Year 1630, this poem was published in the second folio of John Milton plays as eulogy. William Shakespeare's plays were published in folio. First folio 1623, second folio 32, next folio probably just 52 around, and last probably just I think fourth folio probably came in 67 around, last 85 probably. So on Shakespeare, William Shakespeare's first published poem. This poem was written in 1630, published as part of the second folio of the plays of William Shakespeare in 1632. Remember that. Next we have Of Reformation, The Reason of Church Government. These are the works, remember that. Then another just work of John Milton, Of Reformation, then The Reason of Church Government, then An Apology Against Parliament. These are the names of the tracts, remember that. These are the names of the tracts or the pamphlets that John Milton wrote one after the other, as many as five such kind of tracts or pamphlets John Milton wrote. Like one of Reformation, the other the reason of a church government, then an apology against Parliament. Five anti-prelatical tracts in total. All these there were the total five number of such tracts. Three I have mentioned, and these tracts were all against the actions, the doings of the church authorities. He had condemned church and all the officials and their function through these five, just you can say that, five tracts. Yes, next, The Doctrine and Discipline of Divorce. 1643 he wrote, and its second and large version came in 1644. Next, The Judgment of Martin Bucer, just concerning divorce, 1644 it came. Then these tetrachordon means four just four stringed, 1645. This is the Greek word that means four stringed. Then Colestrian, 1645, instrument of punishment or the house of justice. Again, just the Greek word that means I told you, just a house of justice or tool of punishment. Next, and remember these works, this like The Doctrine and Discipline of Divorce, 1643, second and large version 1644. The Judgment of Martin Bucer concerning divorce, 1644. Tetrachordon, four string, 1645. Colestron, just a tool of punishment or house of justice, 1645. All these works till here were divorce tracts. Remember that these were the works which were based on divorce. In the first tetrachordon, he made mention certain certain paragraphs or parts of the Bible to justify this to prove that divorce in some cases becomes very, very important. Why? Because at that time John Milton was just contemplating to get divorce from his wife Mary Powell, because the marriage was to some extent was disaster. Next, of Education 1644, Areopagitica, very very important work, and these two works all about the importance of the freedom or the liberty of press. Through these two works of education and Areopagitica, very very important. Here, through these two important works, Milton raised his voice against the licensing, against the licensing of against the licensing of the press, against the licensing of the just the free voice of, against the licensing that somehow curbed and checked the free flow functioning of the press. Next, the tenure of kings and magistrates, 1649, important work. Then Iconoclastus. This is again probably you can say that a Latin or Greek word. It means in English image breaker. Remember that. This actually just a work John Milton wrote in the year 1649. Remember that, and remember one thing: 1649 is the year Charles the First was decapitated. Charles the First was executed. Charles the First was beheaded. Charles the First was killed as a punishment given to him by the parliament. And his execution means his killing happened on 30th January 1649. And after this, John Milton wrote this Iconoclastus, that Latin or Greek word that means image breaker, image breaker. And in this work, he is justifying the execution of Charles the First, and he wrote this work in reply to which work? In reply to this Echin Basilic. Echin Basilic means just Echin, yes, Echin Basilic means a royalist work. Just where it is. Yes, just Echin Basilic. Echin Basilic was actually a royalist work in which just the killing of Charles the First was condemned in a very bad manner, in a very severe manner, and the king was painted with all the beautiful colors. All right, so in order to condemn it, in order to prove it wrong, John Milton wrote this what? Wrote it Iconoclastus. Remember that. First, this was written, probably it was written on the 10th day of the execution of Charles the First. Icon Basilic written on the 3rd day of the execution. It was probably a kind of a secret autobiography of the royalist. It was written probably or published on the 10th day of the execution killing of Charles the First. It means probably 9th of February 1649. Just where it is. Yes, Icon Basilic was written. And in order to give a just a befitted reply to this work that justified the killing or execution absolutely inhuman and wrong, Milton wrote Iconoclastus, in which he justified the killing of justified the just execution of Charles the First. Remember that. Stephen, defense of the yes, defense of the English people against Sel Selmesis 1651, another important work. Anti-monarchical tracts, these all were, remember that. This tenure of king and magistrate, just Iconoclastus. Then we have defense of the English people against Salmesis. These all works were the anti-monarchical tract. These all were the works Milton wrote to condemn monarchy, condemn the rule of the kings, and condemn the royalty, remember. Now, History of Britain, Milton wrote, very important work of John Milton, 1670. Then Artis Logicae, 1672. These two works, History of Britain, Artis Logicae, written 1672. These are written in Latin. These are the prose work written in Latin language. And after that, De Doctrina Christiana, English translation, on Christian doctrine, composed between 1655-1660. So this work of John Milton, De Doctrina Christiana, English translation, on Christian doctrine. This work of John Milton was written in between 1655-1660. Next, and this work based on works on history and theology. Remember that this work on theology. All right, and this is history. That's why these works were called history and theology. One work was based on history, the other on theology. Next, the magnum opus. Now the masterpiece, magnum opus of John Milton, that is the Paradise Lost. And it is said that Milton began working on Paradise Lost in 1658 around, probably completed in the year 64-65, and got it published in the year 1667. First published in 10 books, second publication in 1674 in 12 books. So see that, Paradise Lost, 1667 in 10 books, second edition in 12 books in 1674. Almost 1100 lines are used. And now Paradise Regained, 1671 in 4 books. And last but not the least, Samson Agonistes in 1671, a closet drama, very, very important play from the pen of John Milton. And now, the sad, shocking demise, means death of John Milton. He did breathe his last on 8th November 1674 at Bun Hill, Raw, London. So it was 9th December 1608 Milton born. It was 8th November 1674 John Milton breathed his last. That's it, my dear friends, in this video. Thank you for watching.